Christmas is here. Let the lawsuits begin. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. Merry Christmas to you. First Liberty is a nonprofit legal organization that exclusively does religious cases, religious freedom, First Amendment cases. That's all we do. That's our sole focus. And our clients never get a bill. And the only way we can do that is through the faithful support of people like you who want to see these kind of results in the real world. So if that matters to you, please consider clicking on the big red Give button up at the top of the page. I've got Kelly Shackelford here. He is President, CEO, and Chief Counsel here at First Liberty Institute. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Stuart.
I want to go back in time a bit and talk about the Christmas cases that First Liberty has done over the years, and also talk about the context of those, why legally each one of these matters. It all started 20 years ago with something that got to be known as the candy cane case. Tell us about it.
The candy cane case started really when you had a school you had a class. Let's go with the class. Jonathan Morgan, young elementary school student, they were having a winter celebration.
Of course.
At school.
Yeah.
You know how we all celebrate winter.
I celebrate winter all the time.
Give gifts.
Yeah.
Well, this was a winter celebration. They were allowed to bring gifts to their classmates. In fact, they all were bringing like 21 gifts for each of their classmates.
So everybody got one.
Jonathan had heard of a story, a poem about the legend of the candy cane. And if you've seen it before, it talks about the J is for Jesus and different symbology. Well, he had a copy of this little poem, and he had a candy cane pen, because candy wasn't allowed to be given out, inside a peppermint-looking striped bag.
Yeah.
And he was so excited to give his friends this gift. And so everybody arrives at school, and they give their 21 gifts, and Jonathan arrives, and he's stopped at the door by the teacher, who tells him, you can't give this to your classmates because it has something religious in it. And
I'm not an attorney, but I know that's wrong.
Well, it took a long time to get to the bottom of that. But what happened is Jonathan was just, really disappointed.
And mortified.
Yeah. He'd done something wrong, right? Well, that was the start of the lawsuit, where, first we went to the school, we said, hey, this is religious discrimination. And by the way, we were talking to the reporters when this first happened. It was unbelievable. We looked at their policy. Part of the winter celebration requirements was not to use normal Christmas symbols, but you could use, and literally this is what they said, symbols like snowflakes and snow people.
Snow people.
Not snowmen or snow women, snow people. This was how completely ridiculous they had gotten, to where they were censoring a young child.
Yeah.
And we started the lawsuit, and what happened is, by the time we got to the next year, it was still going on. All this was still going on, and we ended up saying, hey, this is going to happen again if we don't get an injunction.
Yeah.
So we went into court. We got an injunction.
Which means the school has to back off.
They had to back off. Now, here's what I thought was just priceless. We didn't know this. Jonathan had kept his gifts for a year.
Really?
He was so excited to give those, and he hoped one day he could, that he kept those. And there was a story in the Dallas Morning News. And when you turn from the front page to the page it was on, the headline was, his eyes lit up. And they were talking about Jonathan being able to finally give his gifts to his friends that he had wanted to give a year ago.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it was a victory for freedom as far as sharing your personal expression of faith as a student, right? Am I getting it right?
Well, it was. There's a lot to this story, obviously. The argument by the other side, by the school district, was that elementary school children didn't have First Amendment rights. And this is what we went to the Federal Court of Appeals arguing over. Yeah. And it was so ridiculous that an old case that involved whether you were forced to salute the flag in violation of the Jehovah's Witness beliefs. Yeah. This was elementary school kids. Yeah. And in their 80s, they joined filing a brief in support of our case, and we literally were having to argue whether you strip away all the First Amendment freedoms of elementary school students, and you can discriminate against them religiously however you want. We ended up winning at the Federal Court of Appeals, an important precedent. But what happened is, because it was the first time they had ruled on this is what the court said, they sort of gave them a pass and didn't make them financially responsible or anything. They just said, okay, this is now the precedent from now on. But Jonathan did at least get to deliver his gifts, and we did get a major precedent that lives on today.
Let's talk about another case that involves kids as well, and it deals with Christmas cards for veterans. What's it all about?
Well, we had, around Christmas, we had veterans hospitals that were refusing to allow kids who went to give Christmas cards. They also wanted to sing carols, and they were banned from doing both.
That's shocking.
Because they were religious.
Well, yeah.
Christmas is a religious holiday.
Well,
you
I've
can't
noticed
do that.
It is, yeah.
And so we actually, ended up winning, and the cards did. I mean, these are veterans who are so injured that, in health situations, that they were in the hospital during Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that you wouldn't allow little children to send Christmas cards to them is just unbelievable. But, I remember back, we were very small. I remember Hiram Sasser and I sitting back and going, well, it seems like every Christmas we get some big case about Christmas. And back then we were so small, it's like we really kind of needed it, or else people wouldn't even know we were out here. But everybody was interested when it was Christmas.
Yeah.
And I'll be darned if almost every year we had one of these crazy cases where somebody was trying to shut down Christmas. They were trying to shut down the celebration of Christmas. They were trying to tell kids that they couldn't celebrate Christmas. And it was like a common thing almost every year.
And one that we see in the headlines a lot deals with nativity scenes, particularly in public parks or in front of City Hall or the county courthouse. First Liberty has been involved in more than a few of those over the years as well.
Absolutely. And we've got to talk about this pre-Coach Kennedy case and now post-Coach Kennedy case.
Right.
Pre-Coach Kennedy case, the law was so messed up because of the Lemon precedent, the Lemon case, that what they said is, well, you couldn't put up a nativity scene or a menorah for Hanukkah, or unless there were enough secular symbols around it where people really didn't know what you were celebrating.
Santa Claus, a reindeer, something.
And one of the justices called it the plastic reindeer rule. That you could put up a nativity scene as long as you put up a plastic reindeer, which he was making fun of how ridiculous this reading of the law is. But here's the great news. We were involved in a number of those cases around the country, got nativity scenes, protected because we followed what the law was.
And bought a plastic Santa and some reindeer.
Exactly. They did whatever they needed to do. But here's the great thing. Now, in the Coach Kennedy case, Lemon was thrown out. All 7,000 of all those citations over, including all the nativity scenes, silliness. So now every city, every government can put up a nativity scene, can put up a menorah, can put up those kinds of symbols, and to tear them down or to say they can't would be religious discrimination, and because Lemon is gone.
And to be clear, you no longer need the plastic Santa and reindeer.
You do not.
If you want them, that's great, but you don't have to do
don't.
that. You can just put a nativity scene if you want to.
It's fine to do that. And again, I think it's going to be one of the examples of the next sort of following of Kennedy. We're going to have a bunch of these cases now where stuff that has not been allowed for 50 years, that is allowed, but some people aren't going to realize it until there's a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Some people are kind of trying to shut down religious expression when really there's no basis for it. And so I think there's going to be nativity scenes around the country this year, and menorahs and religious symbols. And I have a feeling some of those might result in some lawsuits, but we'll win those lawsuits because the Coach Kennedy case was real clear. Lemon is dead. And that was the basis for all these attacks.
People are going to ask a follow-up question. They're going to say, okay, but what do I need to know? What do I need to file? What do I need to do in order to put the community nativity scene back where it was? What's the answer?
I mean, you just need to ask the government entity, hey, you ought to put up a Christmas celebration, a nativity scene. You ought to put up a menorah. You ought, what you just need to tell them. People need to ask. The community needs to ask. Hey, why aren't we celebrating Christmas?
But there's nothing you need to file. There's nothing you need to look up. That's
Nope.
just the law now, right?
It is, yeah. They can, if they want, it helps them. They can go to Restoring Faith in America, our website on that.
Yeah.
RFIA, restoringfaithinamerica.org, and it lays out the change in the law, the Supreme Court decisions, the nativity scenes, and other many examples of people that people can now do in their own community. So they can go there if they need it or to show it to somebody. But the reality is you can do it. The Supreme Court's ruled on all this, and it's a different day. It's just people have been trained for 50 years. Oh, no, you can't celebrate Christmas. Oh, no, you can't celebrate, Hanukkah or any other religious holiday.
No,
Yes,
you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. A story in recent times, just in the last 12 months even, that's very encouraging to me is what happened in San Diego with Awaken Church. Tell us that story.
Well, Awaken, there's a beautiful amphitheater in San Diego, the Rady Shell.
Yep.
And this is open for rental. And this Awaken Church had 7 campuses, and they're like, we need a place bigger than any one of our campuses so we can have a big Christmas program.
And it's a big program.
It is.
Yeah.
And so they reached out to the Rady Shell.
It has fireworks.
Oh, it's awesome. And so they reached out, and they went through a long negotiation just to kind of nail down all the details. And they said, great. And then all of a sudden at the end they said, wait, you're a church? And they said, yeah, we're a church.
Duh.
Oh, we can't rent to churches. Well, why not? Well, we don't have any policies on renting to religious groups. Now,
Well, apparently they do.
well, yeah, which is no.
Yeah.
But what I love about Jürgen, the pastor, is his father was in East Germany under communism,
Yeah.
and was actually arrested a number of times because he was a freedom person. And so Jürgen had been raised, and he was like, this isn't right. And he reached out to us. And we said, no, it's not right. This violates California law in addition to federal law. And so we sent a letter to the city and said, hey, you can either voluntarily comply or we can have a federal judge help you. And they decided voluntarily. And so I get this text message at 1 in the morning. And it's Jürgen. And he says, I hope you're not up reading this, but I just had to send this. He said, we just had 2 Christmas programs. He said 7,000 packed each time.
Wow.
He said so many people came to faith that we literally couldn't count them. And then he thanked us and First Liberty for helping him. Well, here's a great follow-up to that.
Yeah.
That was last year. They had 2 performances. This year, they're having 7 performances.
Wow.
But it's an example of the kind of religious discrimination and the you can't have Christmas, you can't do all that. It's an example of something we run into almost every year. I think a lot of this is because of the Lemon case. I'm hoping that this is going to begin to stop as we educate people that things are different now.
It is very different now, and it's so important for people to not just know that, but to act based on that, to actually do the things that we're free to do.
Yes, and I mean, I tell you, the craziest stuff we used to get. They used to have programs at school called Celebrating Christmas Around the World.
I played a shepherd, thank you.
And they would do everywhere around the world and how they celebrated.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't do anything for Christians.
Well.
It was, and when we would ask them, we would say, "Why are you doing how Muslims celebrate, how everybody else?" And they said, "Oh, we can do all that. We just can't do Christians."
Well, that makes no sense.
and so we would have to come in and go, "No, you can't do that." So I really think that a lot of the stuff they were doing was already a violation of the law, like the Awakened Church.
Yeah.
I mean, that was already. But I think that the line has been moved to where all these things that were violations, like not having a plastic reindeer, that's over. And so I think you're going to see less mistakes, I hope. But this is why we've really stressed in Restoring Faith in America that it's really important for everybody in their own community to bring these things back. If the cross was taken down, put it back up. If the 10 Commandments was put in a closet, pull it back out. Right? If there was no prayer at the school board, add it back in.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all stuff that you can do in your community. The law is already on your side.
Let's talk about this to wrap this up from the larger legal perspective. Why do these cases matter? You've been hitting on that some. And legally, what do we need to know? Help us understand what's legal and what's not. You've hit it some, but I just want you to summarize it, wrap it up for us.
Well, this is important because this is all part of attempting to create what a past commentator said, the naked public square, where religion is sort of pushed out of society. You can have your religious freedom in your church, in your synagogue, but don't you bring it out in public where it influences.
Yeah, the freedom to worship is the way I've heard that said. I'm like, no, that's not what the First Amendment says.
That's not what it says. And so this attack on Christmas is baseless. And so, but it causes people to be fearful. It causes people to censor themselves. It really shuts down. I think because of the change in the cases we've just won, restoring faith in America, it could really change our whole country. I mean, when people start doing things, other people see that they're doing things. And it starts to really replicate around the country. We're already seeing this with students praying after football games, coaches praying after football games. We're seeing huge gatherings after the football games because of what started with Coach Kennedy, one person.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with Christmas and just people beginning to realize. So it's really important. The law is really clear. There is a free exercise clause which protects every American's right to freely exercise their religion without the government getting involved. There's an establishment clause, which the founders passed because we didn't want the national government to establish a national church.
Like the Church of England,
that
which is
we
run
would
by the
have to
government.
support.
Yeah.
Right? And so what the establishment clause is really about is the government setting up a religion and trying to coerce you to be a part of it. That is really not an issue these days.
Yeah.
The church of anything wouldn't work. Denominations would fight each other, right? I mean, that's not going to happen in the United States.
Yeah.
So we don't want the government coercing anybody. Absent that, really, this is just religious freedom and openness and expression. The founders wanted the fullest religious expression that would be allowed for their citizens.
Very good. Kelly, thank you so much. I appreciate the work you've been doing for so long. It's been a joy to work alongside you. I just appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Thank you. And it is so vitally important for people who want to express their faith, who want to have the free exercise of religion, to have advocates who will walk alongside them when the challenges come, because there will be challenges out there. And that's what First Liberty does. If you'd like to see America's religious heritage and our free exercise of faith protected, well, that's what we do. If that matters to you as much as it does to us, we invite you to join with us by clicking on the big red Give button at the top of the page. First Liberty is fighting for what matters most.